I'm Claire Ridley. It's the 13th of January 2025 and this is for my GCSE Speaking and Listening. And it is on ultra-processed foods. So, let me ask you this. Do you believe you freely choose what foods you consume? Throughout this talk, I'm going to challenge that belief and prove to you that your choices are not all your own free will. These days, you can't turn on the TV or look at your phone or even walk down the high street without seeing flashing lights offering tantalising, tasty treats such as fried chicken, donuts and pizza. It's also extremely colourful, cheap and convenient. And yet, we know these foods are driving a food catastrophe. Evidence that pre-packaged, pre-prepared, highly processed foods are linked to weight gain, cancers and type 2 diabetes. I understand why food companies want to make these more palatable, as their priority is profit. So therefore, this is a fight between money and morals. We are in the middle of a food crisis, and yet we can't stop consuming. So how has food become so irresistible? We have always understood weight gain to be a failure of willpower, bad choices, and lazy people. It's their fault, right? Well, in 2017, Professor Carlos Mateo, a nutritionist, was seriously concerned with the epidemic weight gain and obesity. He wanted to investigate why our food was impacting on us so badly. He found data from 1960 to 1975 that showed that obesity across all age ranges slowly went up a little. But in 1975, obesity massively skyrocketed and continues to do so today. If it was willpower alone, then what we're saying is everyone simultaneously lost willpower and moral responsibility over food in just a few years. That's not plausible. Something else was making our food irresistible. Mateo conducted a study about our diet trends. He discovered a huge decline in cooking oil sales. This really surprised him. Why are we buying less fat and yet gaining weight? There's a whole history of nutritional science proving that fat, sugar and salt are the problem, and yet people have listened. They don't want to buy cooking oil because cooking oil is 100% fat. But no one is consuming a lot of fat whilst cooking healthy meals at home. So now we replace those home-cooked meals with noodles, ready meals and takeouts. In fact, 73% of the food we consume globally is processed. Dr. Carlos Mateo concluded that there needed to be a new classification of food, ultra-processed foods. This food is made using ingredients you can't find in a home kitchen, such as preservatives, stabilisers and additives. He investigated further. He conducted a test. He gave two different groups of people two different diets. One consisted of minimal ultra-processed foods and the other was highly processed foods, but the calories, salt and fat were exactly the same on both diets. He thought that he wouldn't find a difference between the two diets. He was wrong. Ultra-processed foods were overconsumed because they're high in calorific density per bite, so you needed more to get full up. The high fat and sugars also triggered dopamine receptors, so we overconsumed for pleasure as well. Subsequently, ultra-processed foods were making us fat. So what changed in the 1970s? Well, Heinz discovered what they termed as the bliss point. For an example of that, if you add a spoonful of sugar to a cup of tea, it gets sweeter and tastier. Every time you add another spoonful of sugar, that sweet and tastiness increases until there's a point where it just becomes oversweet and sickly. The point where it was at its tastiest and sweetest, they call the bliss point. Heinz sales absolutely boomed, and many other big food manufacturers followed suit, like Dr. Pepper, Unilever and Spam. At the same time, companies began financing marketing heavily and using new strategies like sounds, colours and smells. Pringles are so irresistible now, it's in their slogan, once you pop, you can't stop. Food companies make money in two ways. They sell more food, and also they can make food cheaper. This is where modified starches come in. They are cheap. They make cereals crispier and yogurts creamier. Marketed as great for the family and healthy protein bars, but when we eat them, our bodies process them too quickly, leading to spikes in our blood sugars, health problems and storing fat. Modified starches mimic real foods like proteins and fruits, but are low in cost, easy to transport and don't spoil easily. This makes them irresistible to the food industry. I confess, I'm a sucker for these foods and these low-cost alternatives. Because of them, I've now had to have my gallbladder removed by surgery, and now forever I'll have to stick to a low-fat diet. 60,000 people like you and I had this surgery last year, and that's a massive cost to the NHS. I don't want anyone else to have to go through this. However, the odds are stacked against us. High doses of sugar and fat create the same chemical reaction in our brains as other banned substances, which means we consume compulsively. So I ask you again, do you still believe your food choices are your free will? I hope today I've proven it's not entirely your choice and we are all being manipulated. So what can we do? Many addictive substances have restrictions and laws, so why not food? Can our government put pressure on the food industry to use less processes when making our foods? We can definitely prepare and cook our own food more to take back control. We need to keep educating people about making informed choices. People's lives are at risk. We must understand healthy foods are the foundation to a healthy life. Thank you for listening.